Okay, welcome back. All right, so this chapter 7 is very short, but what happens is really significant. And I just want to point out when you're reading the chapter and the omniscient author comes in and says some things that it's probably foreshadowing something else that's going to happen. And the way that this book is particularly structured, you see most of the deep analysis is like in the very beginning, and then it sort of plays out in this drama between Janie and whoever. So she starts off again. The years took all the fight out of Janie's face. Sorry, for a while she thought it was gone from her soul. And she starts to point out how Janie does become very lonely. And part of it is because of the way that Joe isolates her from the community, and she doesn't get to participate. But another part of that loneliness is also her marriage. And so once again, what you see, I want to read this description. She didn't read books, so she didn't know that she was the world and the heavens boiled down to a drop. Men attempting to climb to painless heights from his dunghill. And then she's going to make another reference to man and nature. This is important with the the title, Their Eyes Were Watching God. It's important how, I don't want to spoil it for you, but I don't really care about plot when we're talking about analyzing literature, but it's very significant to what natural disaster that happens towards the end. And this is nature. A tsunami could come in, and there's a poem by Tennyson called In Memoriam, and it's really about the dark night of the soul. And I think I've mentioned this before, but this is just a good one to remember. When he talks about is God in nature, then it's strife. And is nature so careful of each type? Are we as significant and important as we think we are, when the response to something like that is none of them matter, they all shall go? And so why did nature spend so much time making us unique only to be able to wipe us out like we're nothing? Is a good question to look at. And I think that's kind of what she's looking at in this when she says that men are climbing, but look at where they're climbing from. Dung. I'm sure you know what that is. And it just seems real small and insignificant. Sometimes this reminds me of Job, when Job is, actually petitioning God and saying, this and that, and the response is, where were you when I made the heavens and the earth? And I remind people of that sometimes when they want to project their feelings onto God. Usually, it's whatever argument, if I care to engage in one. I try not to as I get older. But that idea that I feel this way, so God must feel this way, or whatever, equating yourself with the Creator, because you have all this reason, and you'd say, well, if I was God, I would do this and this and that. It's like, just like you created the universe, right? That was you too, right? That was really brilliant. So how do you know? It's a mystery. How do you know? And if you don't accept that mystery, then you have to do a lot of explaining. And the only way that you can explain is projection, which is interesting that that's coming up right now, because this is exactly what Joe does to Janie while he's experiencing basically just getting older and Mother Nature catching up with him. And so what does he do? He looks at Janie and he starts to criticize and make fun of her body. But I'll get to that in just a second, because I have marked this one, so I want to read this passage too. um, it says that somebody near about making summertime out of loneliness. This was the first time it happened, but after a while, it got so common she ceased to be surprised. It was like a drug. In a way, it was good because it reconciled her to things. She received all things with the solidness of the earth, which soaks up urine and perfume with the same indifference. And so here you have again that in the, I guess, in the point of view of nature, man, there is no class, right? That's if we have an earthquake or a tornado, it's going to destroy whoever is in the path. They're not going to consider your education or whatever that you have. All must go, just like Tennyson's poem. It doesn't matter. And it's this earth that she keeps returning to, and nature that she keeps returning to for her answers. In a way, this is like she's a transcendentalist. She finds her God through nature and the answers and the solace of life. There's a bit of Thoreau, I think, in her, where she could probably go out to Walden and make the same discoveries about what it is that really matters in our existence, in our quality of life. Americans tend to seem to think that it's all in terms of materialism, but that's really actually what makes it frustrating and unhappy, is because you have to keep dealing with insurance companies and all these other things that, like, why just because you can't die without having some insurance, right? And it makes things very complicated. And she wants to go back to just the beauty and the natural feelings, like the way she did when she was under the pear tree. And so in the eyes of nature, in the eyes of God, and when their eyes are watching God, they soak up, they see the earth soaks up the urine and the perfume with the same indifference. And so this is what I mean by, in the beginning, she's really pointing thematically where she wants to go with all this, and using the omniscient point of view as to be kind of the voice to explain, this. And then there's going to be the drama. And the drama here starts with Joe noticing that his body was starting to sag. And he was getting older, and he's also getting sick, and I think it probably is cancer. But even then, when he realizes that Jody should go to the doctor, he calls in this voodoo doctor. Why? Because he wants to control what's going on with him. He thinks if he spends enough money, he could fix it. And you can't fix it. There's never going to be a hearse, what was the saying, a U-Haul behind a hearse. You don't get to take it with you. But I think a very significant line, she finally has enough. He makes fun of her because she made a mistake with cutting this tobacco. And he always finds a way to point out that she is a woman. So therefore, having a woman do this, she's going to make mistakes because women are stupid. That's the generalization that's always coming out of Joe. Like, what am I doing with this woman? Women can't do anything. And then he says, this little thing like a plug of tobacco. Don't stand there rolling your pop eyes at me with your rump hanging nearly down to your knees. A big laugh started at the store, but then the people thought better of it and stopped. It was funny if you looked at it right quick, but it got pitiful if you thought about it a while. It was like somebody snatched off a part of a woman's clothes. I think she's basically saying here that this is intrusive to talk about your wife's body. And the thing is like, people are, I think, becoming more conscious of this. But even with my own family, even growing up, I've had to say, please don't, you know, let me know every pound I've gained. I don't need, no, people shouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that to other people, but they're just not aware because a woman's body is for so long is just seen as a commodity that, you don't expect men to do certain things, but you always expect women to be thin or whatever, perfect. And we are the ones that have all the hormones and the body changes and the metabolism and the thyroid and all that stuff. So it's not even reasonable. It's not even, it's not going to happen for us. And we're set up for failure every time if that's what it's based on. But it also kind of shows you how shallow it is that every time he has to insult her, he has to go to insulting her body. So she tells him, stop mixing up my doings with my looks, Jody. And if that's not enough, he insults her, and finally she goes there and says it. She says, you big bellies around here and put out a lot of brag, but tain't nothing to it but your big voice. Huh, talking about me looking old. When you pull down your britches, you look like the change of life. So she went there, and this is the one place that a woman could criticize and go, and it would completely destroy a man, as silly as that sounds. Like, women are supposed to take all this criticism, right, for their body, and then yet if you say this one thing, that's it. So notice her words have the power to build him up, and then they have the power to tear him down. Actually, it's the next. I'm ahead of myself. It's the next chapter that talks about his illness, but I don't think that it's just a coincidence that happens after this one. And and the other part of it is she didn't just say that while they were alone. She said it in front of his friends. So all of his ego and pride is basically crushed because what makes him superior to everyone else is the fact that he is kind of differentiated himself in a different class. But when it comes down to it, just as nature has proven, it's indifferent. It doesn't care. It's going to affect you the same way it's going to affect another person. And he has a very hard time dealing with this because he is a controlling husband and person, feels like I can have whatever I want. I just have to go get it in the way he has. But not this. You don't get to buy your life. And so after this, you get into chapter 8. And I wrote in my little margin, double standards. So let me just read this part. After that night, Jody moved his things and slept in a room downstairs. Excuse me. He didn't really hate Janie, but he wanted her to think so. He had crawled off to lick his wounds. They didn't talk too much around the store either. Anybody that didn't know would have thought that things had blown over. It looked so quiet and peaceful around. But the stillness was the sleep of sorts. So new thoughts had to be thought and new words said. She didn't want to live like that. Why must Joe be so mad at her for making him look small when he did it to her all the time? Had been doing it for years. Well, if she must eat out of the long-handed spoon, she must. Jody might get over his mad spell any time at all and begin to act like somebody towards her. But the thing is, he doesn't, and he insults her as a way of getting back the best way he knows how, and that is by refusing her supper, by not letting her, especially as he gets sick, take care of him, and to get that from another woman because he thinks, oh, she's just going to poison me. She must hate me so much to insult me. When really, I mean, she wouldn't have done it had she not just finally had enough and talked back. And by the way, in the beginning of the book, Phoebe points out that Janie looks just like her daughter. Like, you could be your own daughter. So Janie's body isn't, it's still in really good shape. Which brings me to another point, though. Notice that Janie hasn't had kids. And I think that as a book about a woman's self-discovery, this is a very convenient thing to do to a character, is to not let her get pregnant, because that changes everything once you have kids. And in some ways, I mean, in most ways, for the best, but it kind of puts a damper in things when you're trying to find yourself and become whoever you want to become, because you have to become that mother. And it's a whole different experience. And also, one of the things I wanted to mention is to go back, because that reminded me of Virginia Woolf. But remember what I said about her essay, A Room of One's Own. I highly recommend you read it. It's only about 100 pages. And it sounds kind of a lot. It's dense, but I'm going to apply it in a lot of my courses. So if you're going to continue with me through this year, whatever AP year it is for you, I would recommend you do that, because I'll make some references to it. But how do men see themselves if they can't see themselves twice their size through the looking glass, and the looking glass being the woman? They have to be able to see themselves superior. So when a woman puts a man down, it's a lot harder for him. It's, in a way, castrating him, which is the joke she made in a way about, that part. Anyways, all right, so let me move on. Okay, she doesn't want to live like this, though. She wants to make peace with him. She wants to ask for forgiveness, but she wants him to also understand that you've been doing this to me for a long time. And I love how she says, you change everything, but nothing changes you. He doesn't have to change. He doesn't have to grow. And so he's stuck. And like I said before, he's too stubborn in a way, I guess, to really talk to a doctor. So it's too late. That's why I think it might be cancer. It's too late when there's nothing more that they could do about it. And so then finally she gets in, he goes into his room. He's not taking care of himself, and he's basically getting ready to die. She wants to talk to him. We've got to have a talk before this happens. And so she says, I knowed you wasn't going to listen to me. You changes everything, but nothing changed you. Not even death. But I gotta go. I'm going out of here and ain't going to hush. Now you gotta listen to me before you die. Have your way all your life. Trample and mash down, then die rather than to tell yourself about it. Listen, Jody, you ain't the Jody I run off on the road with. Use what left after he died. All right, so then he tells her to, shut up. Why are you blaming me? You did all this, and then you just came in here to basically tell me that it's my fault. And he says, okay, she says, you ain't tried to pacify nobody but yourself. Too busy listening to your own big voice. All this tearing down talk, Jody whispered, with sweet globules forming over his face and arms. Get out of here. So he tries to tell her to get out. All this bowing down and this obedience under your voice. That ain't what I rushed off the road with. So she's basically saying, I didn't sign up for this. I had no idea what it was going to be like to be the mayor's wife. And so he dies, basically, during this argument. And she looks at his face for a long time. She realizes, and then she says, "This sitting in the ruling chair has been hard on Jody." Uh, but then she does something different. She goes to the bathroom and she looks at herself in the mirror. She looks at her skin, she looks at her face. She starts to see herself again and realizing that she is beautiful. And the young girl's gone. It says, but a handsome woman had taken her place. She tore off the handkerchief. She's going to let down her hair. The weight, the length, the glory was there. She took careful stock of herself, then combed her hair and tied it back up again. Then she starched and ironed her face, forming it just into what people wanted to see, and opened the window and cried, "Come on here, people. Jody is dead. My husband is gone from me." This is going to sound kind of sad, but my grandmother had a similar experience when her husband died and left her as a widow when she was probably in her early 60s. And my grandmother still looked really good. She played softball still. But I remember her telling me, and it's okay because they're both dead now, but I remember her telling me that she had to like put on a sad face for the funeral, but all she could really think is, thank God I'm free. I'm free. That sounds really terrible, but he was abusive and controlling. And she never really had her own life because her mother was controlling. And for the first time, she's 60 years old, and she finally feels free. So my advice to you is don't marry someone who's controlling and could take that from you, because you might be 60, 70 years old before you can finally say, oh, I'm free. So freedom is important. And anyways, she makes sure he has a very fine funeral. It's the best funeral anyone has ever seen. She doesn't spare any expenses. Most of the day she was at the store, but at night she was there in the big house, and sometimes it creaked and cried all night under the weight of lonesomeness. And then she'd lie awake in bed and ask lonesomeness some questions. She asked if she wanted to leave and go back to where she had came from, try to find her mother, maybe tend to her grandmother's grave, sort of looking over the old stomping ground generally, digging around inside of her like she had found that she had no interest in that seldom seen mother at all. She hated her grandmother and had hid it from herself all these years under a cloak of pity. She had been getting ready for a great journey to the horizons in search of people. It was important to all the world that she should find them, and they find her. But she had been whipped like a cur dog and ran off down a back road after things. So, again, this omniscient voice is telling us kind of the inside secrets of Janie, and in general, kind of women. She hated her grandmother, but it was a cloak of pity. She felt sorry for her. And I mean, hate is such a strong word. I don't know how you could possibly really hate your mother or your grandmother. But here's the thing about her, and this is something that Virginia Woolf refers to as the angel of the house. This is a perfect description of what Virginia Woolf is saying in this part right here. Here, Nanny had taken the biggest thing God ever made, the horizon, for no matter how far a person can go, the horizon is still way beyond you, and pinched it into such a little bit of a thing that she could tie it about her granddaughter's neck, tight enough to choke her. There's a lot of analysis. In fact, I would hang on to this passage if I were you and you were thinking about writing Their Eyes Are Watching God. I think that's interesting how she reconciles herself with nature. She recognizes who she is. And I think that, I heard this recently when I was listening to a director think it was somebody who worked on Finding Nemo, and I love what he said. I'm going to use this now. He said that everyone is born. This is after his observation of raising kids, by the way. Everyone is born with a certain temperament and wired a certain way, and there's nothing you can do about it. And all you have to do is look at two siblings and see, they had the same parents, and their lives are very different. Why? Because they're wired differently. And some of us, I think, are wired to have big dreams, and it's for a reason. It has to be for a reason. Otherwise, why are we made that way? So anyways, that's my inspirational speech that came out of the little horizon, and taking but that parent taking the horizon and pinching it. If you're the type of person who thinks like, George Lucas, I think you mentioned his father wanted him to do some kind of office equipment or some sales, I don't know, something very small, and compared to what his imagination wanted him to do. And to take that and say, well, you have to do this. And especially as you're approaching probably your early 20s, there's that silent crisis of identity, of who am I? So you have to follow your bliss and be true to whatever it is that you want to do in life. So anyways, okay, I digress. All right, so how is Janie now that Joe is gone? It's very interesting. She starts to enjoy herself. She sits out on the porch when she wants to. She talks to people. She lets her hair down, literally and figuratively. And this makes people, now she's got the society worried about her. Particularly men are telling her, wait a minute, a woman can't just live like this. You're going to have to think about getting married. And of course, her experience in marriage has not been fun, and now she's got money. So, there's two things that she has going that other women don't have, and that is that she doesn't have children to worry about, she doesn't have a husband to worry about, and she actually has some money of her own now. I mean, she's free. She's free to do what she wants to do. But yet this bothers society. Now she's got to answer. It's like, first I had to answer to a husband. Now I have to answer to my friends. You can't just run around like this and act like you're having a good time. People are going to think you're not sorry Jody is gone. And after a while she says, I don't care what they think. I've had to be a certain way, and I'm pretty much summarizing this chapter for you. I've had to be a certain way for so long that now I'm going to be myself. So, notice when she opens up to that, again, she gets what she's looking for. Because who comes into her life? Tea Cake. And remember how she said that the other men didn't make rhymes to her? Well, this guy plays music. He's like kind of a jazz figure. He makes her laugh. He is a nonconformist. He's a bit of a transcendentalist like she is. He loves nature. And first thing he does is teach her how to play checkers. And he wants her to have fun. He wants her to enjoy herself. And he really isn't trying to use her. He does go and he gets work and he gets some money. And then when he gets some money, he wants to take her out. So I'll talk more about Tea Cake next time. All right, thanks.